Good morning, this is Jen, the Liberty Lion, and I just want to make a quick video that takes us back to the Civil War. This is a monument in Grimes County, this monument is in Anderson, Texas, and it's talking about the Civil War, and it goes on talking about some of the things that happened during the Civil War, and down here at the last paragraph, it says in 1865, the Piedmont Springs Resort Hotel, 7 miles to the west, became headquarters and hospital for Walker's division on its return from Louisiana, where it helped prevent a federal invasion of Texas. Okay, a federal invasion of Texas. That's basically what the Civil War was. Now, I know a lot of people believe that the Civil War was about freeing slaves, and the Civil War was about emancipation for slavery and all these other things, and people have been propagandized too about how great Lincoln was. But I want to point out a couple things in the book, The Problem with Lincoln by Thomas J. DiLorenzo, and I got this book online. So one of the things he talks about is in a book called Lincoln's Wrath. Jeffrey Manber and Neil Dahlstrom made a powerful case that Lincoln was essentially the founding father of fake news. He and other Republican Party luminaries had long been involved in newspaper ownership, and they were experts at political manipulation of the media. And that's true even today. A lot of the news we see these days is just completely and absolutely fake and full of lies. So this is not a new thing. This is something that has been going on for a long time. Later, he says Hamilton's political nemesis, Thomas Jefferson, took the opposite position. He was the strict constructionist interpretation of the Constitution, that the only legitimate power of the federal government were those explicitly delegated to it in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, or Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Jefferson considered the 10th Amendment, which reserves the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states or to the people, to be the most important element of the entire Constitution. So we've seen in the various other papers that I've given you, even after the Civil War, the officer's manual, the military officer's manual, which I've been going over, which states that the federal government has power and authority on federal lands. The Eisenhower report that states that the federal government has authority over the federal lands. The early congressional papers show that the United States is the federal government and that it erected a state on the federal land ceded to it. It makes no sense to claim that the federal government has power over the states when the states created it and the states had to cede power to the federal government. And that's even in more recent law written by Congress, that they have to get jurisdiction over the federal areas from the state. But during the Civil War, Lincoln basically wanted to turn that upside down and claim that and propagandize to people that the federal government was in fact in charge of over all the states, when in fact they're not. So the official date of the end of the Civil War was May 9th, 1865. 6.5 weeks later, on June 27th, Sherman was given command of the military district of Missouri and the land west of the Mississippi. The objective was a war that would rid the Great Plains of the Great Indians so that the government subsidized transcontinental railroad could be constructed, we are not going to let a few thieving, ragged Indians check and stop the progress of the railroads, Sherman wrote to Ulysses S. Grant in 1867. The chief engineer of the railroads was Lincoln's old friend, General Granville Dodge, whose assignment during the war had been to begin clearing the Indians from the designated path of the government-subsidized Union Pacific Railroad by killing as many of them as possible. Dodge recommended making slaves of the Indians. So one of Lincoln's generals who just after the Civil War wanted to turn the Indians into slaves. The whole point of the Civil War was, I thought, to free the slaves, right? But this is not so, according to history, where General, General Dodge wanted to make Indians of the slaves to force them to do the grading on the railroad beds, with the army furnishing a guard to make the Indians work and keep them from running away. So this was like just a bunch of crazy tyrants running around, claiming to free slaves of the South, meanwhile letting their army rape the slave women, kill all the men, and kill all their animals, destroy all their property, making sure to take down the foundation of the home, which was back in those days the fireplace, and putting them on trains and sending them up north. Why would they want to clear out the entire South? The land. Land is like the most important commodity there is. So we know that Lincoln used the military to confiscate the railroads so that products could be shipped and the military could use the rail lines. And they were able to, like Rockefeller was able to ship his products into the South, but he was also able to starve the South by keeping the rail lines from going into the South. This made Rockefeller rich, and it gave Lincoln extra powers in that he was able to confiscate private property to free people from private property. So basically, he was able to use his power to confiscate the rail lines, which was considered private property, and then to turn around and free the slaves, which in those days was considered property. And so really Lincoln was just, he must have been absolutely just nuts. So he's basically stealing everybody's property, and if he can't have it, he's just giving his generals the right to tear it all down. Whatever they had, they just tore it down. The same army that had just pillaged, plundered, and looted its way throughout the South to, quote, free the slaves, as folklore has it, was to become a giant collection of slave plantation overseers. The Republican Party, which essentially monopolized the federal government for a half century, decided to wage war on the Plains Indians instead. So isn't that interesting? And a lot of people are not going to like to hear this, because this is a really dark stain on American history. Not that it's the only one or the first one. There's many, slavery included. I'm not a proponent of slavery. But what the federal government did was really an invasion of the very people in place it was supposed to protect by the Constitution. And so Lincoln went outside the Constitution, meaning he went outside his office and exercised powers that he didn't actually have, and waged war on the very people he was supposed to protect. Now, I'm not saying slavery should be or should have been. It should not have been, and that's I think more of a moral issue for people. Um, you know, the whole racism thing and all that is just that's craziness. People are people, humans are humans. So anyway, I just wanted to bring this to light. And if you watch The Walking Dead, you'll see basically in season 11, episode 16, that's what's happening now in the show is you have some people invading the territory or the lands and the communities of other people and taking them over by force using a military that's dressed up like the Star Wars soldiers. And so art imitates life, life imitates art, and here we are. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.